exceeds 330 kilograms per capita per year. There is excess, there is surplus of food, but this surplus is bought by feed factories in order to feed animals, and it's therefore bought also by biofuel industries. So the poverty is the main cause of hunger and malnutrition in the world, with more than 820 million people suffering from hunger and 1 billion more from malnutrition on our world, on our planet. Now, providing high quality food, what does it mean? In order to avoid all forms of malnutrition, humans must have a healthy and balanced diet. Balanced diet may be energy, also food energy, proteins, minerals, vitamins, fibers, antioxidants for getting a balanced diet. Now, we must have a daily diet balance in calories, protein, mineral, and so on. First is calorie. We need food calories in order to spend these calories, this energy in work and so on. We spend these calories at work, but we need everyday diet with calories, with energy. Leisure, walking, yeah, it's less important. But we need to have access to more than 2,200 kilocalories every day. Below this threshold, but it's hunger. So people cannot spend energy at work because they didn't eat sufficiently. We need proteins. We need about 50 to 80 grams of protein every day in order to renew the tissues of the human body. But as you know all that, I think, of course. We must also find in food, of course, mineral elements. Calcium, potassium, phosphate. And phosphate is a main problem because of the scarcity of phosphate in the current mines of phosphate, potash, and trace elements, of course. So we need vitamins and antioxidants, essential for good health. We need fiber. Fiber helps to speed up intestinal transit and protect us against colon cancer. Fibers maybe within legumes, no? We need to have healthy foods without antibiotics in meat, hormones in milk, without endocrine disruptor in fruits and vegetables. Very important problems. The pollution of our food when using pesticides, mainly synthetic pesticides, but we have to look for alternatives in order to resolve this problem. So agriculture must therefore provide us with healthy and very good products without any poison, without any pollution. It's a goal. First goal is provide sufficient food. First goal. The second one is high quality food. Now, adaptation to global warming. Another problem. Another goal. The global warming, the intensity and the frequency of extreme weather accident, extreme weather events, hazard, and so on. That means farmers have to adapt their farming systems to this increasing chaotic climate. That means to adapt farming systems to these increasing random and harsh fluctuations. That means that farmers will have to manage to implement more resilient farming systems in order to get more resilient income, in order to face this more chaotic climate. Now, to adapt their agricultural production system to this frequency and intensity, of course, they have to change their practice. In many countries, farmers have to change their practice in order to adapt to this new situation, chaotic, very chaotic situation. But also, maybe they have to contribute to mitigate this global warming, to mitigate this climate change. So we have to look for new farming systems able to reduce the greenhouse gas emission, maybe carbon dioxide, methane, or So by reducing greenhouse gas emission, and maybe it's possible to sequester carbon into the soil, into the humus of soil. Another goal for the new agricultural, the new farming system, sequestrating carbon and in biomass, in humus and soils. Carbon dioxide, of course, is a greenhouse gas in surplus in the atmosphere. We have to mitigate this emission, and maybe we have to sequester carbon into the soil, into the humus of soil, into the biomass first, and after into the humus, into the soil humus. Carbon dioxide is emitted when deforestation. So we don't have to promote extensive agriculture, which need large extension of arable land with deforestation. We have to promote intensive agriculture, but intensive in agriculture with natural renewal resources, but not with pesticides, pollution, and so on. Not using a lot of fossil fuel. So carbon dioxide is emitted more in south countries. In north countries, I think when using synthetic nitrogen fertilizers like urea, ammonium nitrate or sulfate nitrate, we emitted in the north countries a lot of this kind. A very potent contributor to the global warming. 300 times more than carbon dioxide. It's a very hard problem to resolve. Ammonium nitrate, ammonium sulfate, urea. If it's possible, and you will see it's possible to know it's possible, not using this kind of synthetic fertilizer. There is alternative technique, but no, I think you know, you will see the leguminous plant. Now, methane is the second, at the world level, carbon dioxide for agriculture is for global warming. Methane is the second one. Nitrous monoxide is the third one. But in the industrial countries, this nitrous monoxide is the first one. Now, the problem will be how to reduce the three kinds of greenhouse gas. Now, we'll see climate changes will force farmers to set up, to implement more resilient farming systems in order, more resilient, more diversified farming systems in order to avoid putting all the eggs in the same basket. A more resilient income with more diversified farming systems at the level, at the farm level. Now, global warming already means progressive migrations of numerous plant and animal species, maybe a very difficult problem to resolve, because they migrate all these wild species, animal species, for example. This migration is very different from one species for another. For example, maybe today difficult from some birds to eat worms because the migration of are very different from one species to other. Imbalances in ecology. Now, if you agree, I would like to present you the past mistakes. The past mistakes, I think, is we promoted farming systems inspired by industry's processes, specialization, motorization, robotization, using chemicals, and so on, in order to, of course, provide more food at the very cost, very lowest, at the lowest monetary cost. So we developed in many countries, in industrialized countries, of course, we developed industrial agriculture in order to feed a growing population, but at the lower monetary cost. I say monetary cost, because we see this kind of agriculture provide other costs, hidden costs, so, negative externalities. No? The economists say negative externalities. Costs, they are not in the price of milk, it's not in the price of cereal, it's not in the price of food. But we have to pay. We have to pay for our health because of the pollution. Another cost. We have to take into account this hidden cost. We have to analyze them and promote farming system more sustainable. Now, two ways in order to produce more food at the lowest monetary cost. The first one is by increasing yields per hectare. We need an intensive agriculture in order to feed an overgrowing population, in order to avoid deforestation. We have to promote intensive agriculture able to increase yield per hectare, mainly in South country. Maybe in North country, with surplus of food, it's not the main problem. I think in France, in Belgium, it's not the main problem. We have excess of food. In industrial country, I think we have to produce more high quality food, maybe with not so high yield per hectare. But in many emerging countries, in many South countries, third world we said when I was young agronomist, maybe we have to increase yield per hectare. I understand that. But how? How can we increase yields per hectare. The past mistakes where agronomists worked to select we called high-yielding varieties. High-yielding varieties. But maybe they are not high-yielding varieties. They get high potential of high yield, genetic potential of high yield. Varieties able to get very high yield per hectare. But it depends on the condition, of course. It depends on the cropping system after that. But we promote very high yielding varieties. For example, when I was a young agronomist, with my, I worked in Madagascar, and I had to promote new rice varieties with very high genetical potential of yield per hectare. But this variety, IR8, these varieties required a lot of fertilizers. And these varieties were very sensitive to pest and disease. So these new varieties required a lot of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, insecticides, and so on. But I was promoting this kind of cropping system with variety, with high potential, genetic potential of yield per hectare, but requiring pesticides and synthetic fertilizers. And this woman in Madagascar told me that it was a big mistake, high mistake. Why? Because in rice field, there is rice, but there are snails, fish, ducks, and so on. And with my fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers, and with my pesticides, I was killing their source of protein. In order to increase the rice yield per hectare, I was promoting a cropping system able to kill their main source of protein, ducks, fish, snails, frogs, and so on. And this woman told me that ducks can peck the wheat, So ducks doesn't eat rice, but eats wheat. So ducks helped them against wheat for weeding, and same against pests. The ducks were able, or today are able to pick the harmful insects. So, of course, this woman didn't talk about agroecology, but they taught me that the rice field is not only a rice field. A rice field is an agro-ecosystem, an ecosystem which is not so natural, of course. It's managed, it's implemented, it's artificialized by farmers, of course, but very complex systems with a lot of interactions between rice, harmful insects, ducks, fish, and so on. The work object of farmers, in this case and other case, the work object of farmers is not only a soil, it's not only cattle, it's not only crops, but a whole agroecosystem, very complex agroecosystem. And I think the challenge now in many countries will be designed first, set up after that, and implement new farming systems able to take into account these interactions at the agroecosystem levels. And when we measure the yield per hectare, maybe we have to assess the yield of proteins per hectare, calories per hectare, vitamin per hectare, fibers per hectare of the whole agroecosystem, not only one crop. I think agroecology may be helpful in order to promote new farming systems more in line with sustainable food system. Now, the past mistake were that we selected new varieties, all things being equal. The idea were to compare the genetic potential of different varieties. But all things being equal, that meant zero insects, zero fungus, zero weed, and so on. So we selected high-yielding varieties, no high-yielding varieties. No. High genetic potential for yield per hectare, of course, but with varieties which required a lot of fertilizers and a lot of pesticides. I think the first very hard mistake. Now, so these few new varieties have proven to be demanding really, in terms of fertilizers, and of course susceptible to pest and disease, and so that means requiring pesticides, a lot of pesticides. It's not a mistake of farmers. It was not the farmer's mistake. It was agronomist mistakes. It was, and we have to correct that, of course, today. In many countries, I think it's the best problem. It's a very hard problem. Now, the use of pesticides, of course, has contributed to multiple forms of pollution, soil pollution, water pollution, air pollution, and so on, food pollution, and reduction in biodiversity loss, poorer sanitary quality food with hormones, with antibiotics, with endocrine disruptor. We have to correct all that, of course, in the next years, over the next years. Now, the second mistake was, in order to produce at the lower cost, at the lowest monetary cost, was to, past mistake was, to promote mechanization, motorization, robotization, specialization, extreme specialization in North Country, extreme specialization of agriculture, a disaster, we'll see, specialization of farming system. Of course, in order to get scale economies, we see that poverty is the main cause of hunger and malnutrition. The idea to produce at the lower monetary cost, of course, is not a mistake. But the mistake was how can we really produce at the monetary cost in order to feed poorer people without damage and our environment and quality food and so on. Mechanization, motorization, today robotization of farming system. Now, big problem, very big problem. By doing this, we replaced farmers, we replaced wage laborers in rural areas by motors, machines, robots, and all this affect the employment. In many countries, poorest farmers who are not able to compete with these motorized robotized agriculture are so poor that they cannot afford in order to buy food and to buy food, yeah, sufficient food and sanitary quality food. Labor force has been replaced by method, machines, robots, with the effect of generating, creating unemployment. Now, the low biodiversity within agrosystems, specialized, extreme specialization of agriculture, no? The consequence is the low biodiversity has generated a strong ecological imbalance with environmental, social, and health damage. We call that external negative externalities. It's a big cost: hunger, malnutrition, pollution, health problem, and so on. Now, are there any alternatives? I think so. Yes. Yes. We'll see it's possible to promote technical alternatives to this kind of industrial agriculture. No problem. No technical problem. Problem have been different. Agroecology, in my opinion, may be first considered as a scientific discipline. Scientific discipline. Discipline of agroecologists. This discipline try to better understand the functioning of this agroecosystem, this complexity of his agroecosystem, in order to help farmers after that. A scientific discipline that tries to explain the functioning and the complexity of agroecosystems. Now, agroecology also may be considered as a set of new agricultural practices. A discipline, scientific discipline, can explain, and after that, we can promote new farming systems in line with these goals. We need to recognize that farmers develop agroecosystems which are no longer completely natural, artificialized agroecosystems. But we have to take into account within this agroecosystem the complexity, the interactions between all the elements of this agroecosystem. The work object of farmers is always, we saw, an agricultural ecosystem. That means that each agricultural technique may have an impact on the whole agroecosystem. For example, we need to protect crops against pathogen fungi. So we spray fungicides. If we spray fungicide, maybe we are killing useful fungi in the soil, mycorrhizal fungi. So each technique may have an effect on the whole agroecosystem. And agroecology, scientific discipline, can explain all that. But of course, that means we'll have to change of other farming system. Now, we have to take into account the interaction between the physical environment and the living environment, of course, biosynosis and biotop. And within the physical environment, of course, we have to take into account the interaction between climate, bedrocks, soils, and so on. And within biosynosis, within the living environment, we have to take into account, it's very easy, but we have to take into account the interaction between different species, domestic species, wild species, plants, animals, bacteria, fungi, and so on. Multiple interactions between the many diverse domestic and wild species. Of course, as a scientific discipline, agroecology tried to explain, it tried to enlighten this many interactions within each agroecosystem. I think it's a set of practice now. A set of practice when promoting new farming systems, new cropping systems, new animal raising systems in line with the goals in the context of global warming and so on, we can reason. We need energy. We need, first, we need to make a very intensive use of the renewable natural resources, or the very abundant in surplus natural resources, such as solar energy, sunlight. Sunlight is free of charge. It's not a cost. The cost is access to land, of course. The access to arable land, I understand that. But solar energy we can get without any cost. So we'll try to make the most intensive use of this solar energy, this free solar energy, of course. But also with the carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide, there is a surplus of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. I was told that there is no shortage of carbon dioxide announced for the next years. So we'll make a very use intensive of this carbon dioxide. Photosynthesis, of course, will manufacture sugar, carbohydrates with the carbon of the carbon dioxide. And we can sequester carbon from this carbon dioxide to sequester carbon in the soil, to produce humus, to increase the humus content, the level of humus in the soil. And the same with an air nitrogen in order to manufacture protein. So, sunlight, you know, all the students, of course, know that sunlight provides the energy for the photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a process whereby, of course, solar energy is converted into food energy. So we'll try to make the most efficient use of photosynthesis with resources free of charge, without shortage announcement. No? So water from the we need, of course, water in order to maximize photosynthesis. Water from the soil and carbon dioxide from the air are converted into sugars, of course, and carbohydrates. You know all that very well. But why? Why did we forget all that? Now we'll try to make the best use of water, of rainwater. The only water free of charge is the rainwater, but with chaotic distribution in space and in time. Maybe it will be the first problem, the major problem, most important problem. Now, it's obvious plants need to take in water and mineral from the soil through the root hairs. You know that. Plants need to take in water from the soil in order to transpire, in order to sweat. You know all that, of course. But the main problem is the carbon dioxide have to enter the plants through the stomata, the small holes whereby plants sweat. Stomata are small holes through which water escapes from the plant and then evaporates in the air. But stomata are the small holes whereby carbon dioxide can enter the plants, and after oxygen can be released. We know that. You know all that, of course. Carbon dioxide enters the plant through these small orifices, with small outer openings. No? So, oxygen is released into the air by the same way. You know that very well. Now, that means we have to manage the rainwater in order to lengthen the transpiration of plants, the sweating of plants, in order to maximize photosynthesis per hectare. So, because we know if the crop lacks water in soil, this crop is able to close this small hole in order to stop sweating and not to dry. That means the crop can resist water stress by closing the stomata. But when closing the stomata, that means they are stopping photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide cannot enter the plants by these small holes. So the main problem to resolve is the management of rainwater in order to store a lot of water in the soil and maximize water available for sweating, for plant sweating, of course. The main problem is storage of water in the soil in order to lengthen photosynthesis, to lengthen and, of course, to increase yield per hectare, of course. Now, by closing its stomata, the plant stops photosynthesis because carbon dioxide can no longer enter the leaves. So we need to lengthen this duration of crop transpiration in order to also lengthen the photosynthesis, the duration of photosynthesis. We need to manage rainwater free of charge, but chaotic distribution in space and chaotic distribution in time, consequence of the global warming, consequence of the intensity and frequency of weather accident. Now, we need to store as much water as possible in the top layer of the soil, where we see roots of crop roots, so that it can be easily absorbed by the roots of the plants, by the root hairs, the crop root hairs. We need to store and more water, much water as possible. We have to prevent rainwater for dripping, of course. No dripping now. With maybe plant cover, crop cover. In order to maximize photosynthesis, maybe plant cover. We try to maximize, we try to increase the plant cover of soil in order that solar energy is used by green leaves, photosynthesis, and in order to avoid dripping of rainwater. So we have to intensify this cover plant. That means crop association. It's not monoculture. In the same plot of land, different species which can intercept the solar energy, and we can able to avoid excess of dripping water, of water dripping. Now, we try to promote infiltration of water into the soil. In many cases, we promoted in the past mistakes, we promote excessive plowing of soil. And now we know that excessive plowing may result in oxidation of carbon from the humus, and oxidation maybe means to carbon dioxide emission, greenhouse gas, and so on. So we have to promote maybe minimum tillage, but we have to promote water infiltration into the soil. It's obvious. Maybe the biology, maybe the earthworm, which help us in order to promote to this water infiltration. And after that, we know that it's the humus of soil that will hold the water, into the rubble layer at the root levels, water available for crop sweating. So we have to increase the humus content in soil. We have to sequester carbon from the dioxide and sequester in the soil humus. Well, you know that. But why had we forgotten that? It's not a scoop. Everybody knows that. But industrial agriculture manage farming systems on the contrary of that. I think we have to change. Now, we are in West Africa. In order to avoid rainwater reaping, some farmers, they set up filtering barriers in order to reduce the rainwater reaping, and it facilitates sedimentation of soil. You can see now it's not exactly a terrace, but they have limited, they have reduced erosion, they have promoted sedimentation, and now maybe we can grow new trees, because we know that here now have storage of water, no? We have stored water in the soil. Now, we have to increase the humus content of soils. How can we do that? Well, by organic fertilization. We need to maintain or increase this humus content, this level of humus, this humus level in soil, but by incorporating organic matter, by biomass first. We have to produce first biomass, and after that, we have to incorporate into soil the crop residues, the organic matter, and so on. So, we know that humus is made of 50% of carbon from the air, from the carbon dioxide, carbon sequestered first in straw, stubbles, rays, and after that, we can incorporate this organic matter into the soil in order to increase the carbon into the soil. But we need nitrogen, 5%, 50% carbon, 5% nitrogen. It's important to respect this balance between carbon and nitrogen. If we lack nitrogen post-harvesting, maybe microbes doesn't work in order to manufacture humus in soils. Now, the level of humus in soils can be kept by adding manure. Manure, of course, dung, excrements of animals, but with straw, with stubble, with vegetables too. Now, it's a mixture of litter, of course, solid extractor of animals, and urine, a good combination of carbon and dioxide. But it needs a lot of work to do manure. We'll see. It's not easy to manufacture manure, and we have to see how farmers could bring straw, stubble, solid extractor in the same place in order to manufacture manure, a good manure. It improves the physical condition, humus, we know that, of course. It improves the physical condition of soil and maintains the best condition for microorganisms, the activities of soil microorganisms. We know that very well. But we need a ratio between carbon and dioxide, an adequate ratio between carbon and nitrogen. By doing the soil, of course, the soil is made more fertile, and we need, the more this made for fertile is with the humus content. Humus can hold water at the layer, at the top layer of arable land. We need to manage carbon and nitrogen cycles in short circuit. That means within our crop associations, maybe we associate cereals, tuber rices, rich in carbon, with leguminous, rich in nitrogen. So, agroecology helps us in order to design first crop association with different species, but combination with energy crops and protein crops. Now, farmers should closely associate cropping and animal raising systems. So at the farm level, may be necessary, may be very useful, associate cropping systems with animal raising systems. The idea is to valorize crop residues as a fodder for animals and animal extractor in order to manufacture manure and increase the humus content of soils. Very important association, animal raising system and cropping systems. And of course, in some countries, in some industrial countries, the main problem was that some regions are specialized animal raising systems and other regions are specialized toward only cropping systems. Straw are in stubble and so on are in one region, and extractor, animal extractor, and other regions. Impossible to manufacture humus in soil if we separate animal raising systems with cropping system. That means maybe at the farm levels we have to combine both animal raising system and cropping systems in order to, the economists maybe say, circular economy. So the crop residue serve as fodder, solid extra as fertilizer, organic fertilizer, in order to fertilize their fields. And of course, we can promote compost. Compost, a good combination of different elements with a very nice ratio carbon and nitrogen. So, we are in West Africa. You can see manure, a combination of straw and animal extractor. Combination of carbon from straw and stubble, nitrogen from animal extractor. Right. But the main problem is how farmers can bring this straw, this stubble, this animal extractor. Maybe, maybe the access to carts drawn by animals, oxen or ass. It's very difficult to combine animal raising systems and farming systems in order to increase humus content of soil if farmers doesn't have access to drawing animals and carts drawn by animals like oxen and ass. Now, but it may be useful, but it's not so effective because small wheels and in chaotic, it's very difficult. Maybe we can promote carts with very large wheels, and it's easier to drive these carts in very bad roads, very bad situations. So maybe one, well, but we need, that means we need workers able to manufacture this kind of wheels. Like maybe a very big problem in some countries. Now, it's of course compost, but you know compost in France, different elements, carbon and nitrogen, and we combine this one. We're in Costa Rica, in Latin America, and we can manufacture compost with the help of earthworms. Earthworms help us in order to manufacture compost. We bring straw, stubble, animal excrement, and on the other side we can collect this compost. Easy, very easy, without very, very low cost of production. And so we can too, of course, valorize the crop residues and the animal extracta. Now, we need nitrogen not only in order to help microbes to manufacture humus in soils, but we need protein first, because we need proteins in our food diet. So, we have to eat protein every day in order to renew all the cells and tissues of the human body. You know that very well. Nitrogen, in order to manufacture protein, come from the air. I've been told that 79% of the air is composed by nitrogen, free of charge. No shortage announced in the coming years. No problem. We have to make the more intensive use of these resources, very abundant resources, of course. But the problem is, in order to add nitrogen to the carbohydrates, in order to manufacture proteins, the cost is energy. It's costly in energy manufacture protein and fix nitrogen on the carbohydrates. So a shortage of nitrogen in the air is not expected, of course, for millennia. Incorporating nitrogen into carbohydrates in order to make protein, we know, requires a lot of energy. The past mistake was to use fossil biofuel to manufacture synthetic nitrogen fertilizer, urea, nitrate of ammonium, sulfate of. The cost very, very high in fuel energy. And fossil energy, fossil biofuel, we know that it's fossil. So the perspective of a shortage exists. So the modern agriculture, the new agriculture inspired by agroecology will save biofuels, and we have to look for an alternative. And every farmers in the world know the technique, the alternative, leguminous. Leguminous crops such as lablab, mucuna, pigeon peas, lucerne, and so on. We know, every farmer in the world knows that leguminous microbes helps leguminous plants to extract nitrogen from the air and manufacture protein, adding this nitrogen into carbohydrates of plants, of crops. That means microbes use the photosynthesis, the sugar, the carbohydrate photosynthesized by the crop, and with this energy extract nitrogen and manufacture protein, and after that this microbe give away the nitrogen to the leguminous. So we know the alternative, leguminous plants synthesize protein from the nitrogen in the air through this rhizobia, this kind of microbe that are on their roots. And after that, the post-harvest residues are full of nitrogen and can contribute to fertilize croplands that follows leguminous into the rotation. That means we have to integrate leguminous plants, leguminous crop in our association and in our rotation, crop rotations. Not so specialized agriculture. In Brazil, they produce soja, but soja monoculture. And the residues, the soja residues, no serve in order to manufacture humus. And some European countries, they soja, they don't have these residues of nitrogen in their soil because soja is important from Brazil. So we lack lucerne, we lack clover, we lack leguminous plant in our rotation and our association. And of course, we lack nitrogen to manufacture protein. That means we buy fossil biofuels in order to manufacture synthetic nitrogen fertilizers with emission of oxide of nitrogen, a greenhouse gas, and it costs a lot. Importation, past mistakes. But technical alternative, we know technical alternative. In every country, Brazil, Belgium, France, and South countries, it's possible to associate in short circuit, yes, leguminous plants with carbon plants. This will avoid having used to synthetic nitrogen fertilizers. The spreading of synthetic nitrogen fertilizers emits a lot of nitrous oxide, we saw, a powerful greenhouse gas. The main contribution of French agriculture to global warming is this gas. And the production of synthetic nitrogen fertilizer is expensive in fossil biofuel, and it's expensive in euro, dollars, shillings, and so on. So it's the past, but we know the alternative. So now, mineral fertilization. Mineral fertilization, we need to look for the mineral elements released by the bedrock, by the parent rocks, in the basement underground. Trees, we know that there is a perspective, the future for the phosphate is a very big problem. So the risk of shortage of phosphate in the coming years is a very big risk. Calcium, no, it's not a problem. Yeah, calcium we have a lot. Potash also. But phosphate is a main problem for mineral fertilization. Can we look for and encounter phosphate and other sites? Yes, in the bedrocks. Every day, weathering of bedrocks release mineral elements. So we have to look for these mineral elements in the subsoil, from the subsoil, and with the sap of trees, it goes up into the leaves, and when leaves fall down, fertilize the arable layer, the arable land. So deep roots are able to draw up mineral elements released during the weathering of the parent rocks and bring them into their leaf, and when leaves falling leaves, then helps to fertilize the topsoil, the plough layer, with the mineral of the subsoil. Maybe in many countries we have to promote farming systems which include trees, maybe leguminous trees, of course, but other trees too, in order to fertilize the soil with elements from the subsoil. And we know that now that some fungi, mycorrhizal, no, I don't know how do you say, mycorrhizal fungi help plants extract more mineral elements from clay of soil or from the subsoil. I think the main success will obtain in the next future, I think, of scientific agroecology will be that a better use of this kind of fungi, mycorrhizal fungi, which helps plants to extract mineral from soils and subsoils. So, if we have to protect some crops from pathogenic fungi, we'll not use fungicide because it may be dangerous for the useful, very useful fungi of soil. So the modern agriculture will not use pesticides, fungicides, and so on. It's obvious. Now, these useful fungi become embedded in the root of the plant, so you know that, by the plant, and develop very fine mycelium, and with this very fine mycelium, the mycorrhizal fungi extract these mineral elements, and after that, return these mineral elements to the plants from which they had obtained the carbohydrates. And the carbohydrate, it's photosynthesis, solar energy. So we make a very intensive use of renewable natural resources and very few use of synthetic fertilizers and biofuel and so on. So it's a modern agriculture. Now, this is how they manage the mycorrhizal fungi. This is how they manage to help house plant to extract phosphorus from clays and bedrocks, and parent rocks too. Now, what about this sorghum? If we compared this one with this one, the yield per hectare will triple above this tree. This tree is a leguminous tree. This tree, Federbia albida, we say here, yes, Federbia albida, we say it was Acacia albida in the past, but now they have changed the taxonomy. But we'll see easily that yield per hectares below this tree will be higher than in this part. Leguminous crop, deep roots, photosynthesis. In the dry season, this tree with deep roots have access to the water, in deep water. And its tree is able to do photosynthesis during the dry season. And at the beginning of the rainy season, leaves fall. Leaves fall with carbon dioxide, photosynthesis, nitrogen of leguminous, and mineral elements from the deep layer of soil. So it's one way in order to fertilize the top layer of soil. Federvia albida, I think we try, it's very adapted to semi-arid region in West Africa, really. Now, here we can compare the sorghum here with here. Of course, very high difference. That means if we want to implement this, to avoid desertification of Sahara, for example, in West Africa, it's a very, very useful tree. It's a fodder tree too, for pastoralists. For pastoralists, this tree gives proteins at the end of the dry season. And of course, now we can say agroforestry. That means we grow annual crops below tree cover of this kind of tree. Agroforestry may be very, very useful. Control of pests and pathogens, pest and disease and pathogens. Disease-bearing agents, pathogens such as bacteria, fungi, and weeds, should no longer be eradicated. In order to avoid biodiversity losses, we will not use any pesticides. I understand that biopesticides are better than syntheticide pesticides. But the modern agriculture will not use any pesticides because biopesticides are pesticides. In order to avoid biodiversity loss, in order to get a balanced ecological, very nice interactions between wild species and domestic species in our agro-ecosystem, we don't have to eradicate. We have to look for alternatives. We have to reduce their proliferation, their dissemination, and their damage. That means we have to, in order to avoid, look for resistance or tolerant crops, varieties. These kind of varieties should be grown in the future. Not the high-yield varieties which requires a lot of fertilizers and a lot of pesticides. To prevent pest and disease, one control measure can be spraying auxiliary insects, predators of harmful insects. We spray that, and we can raise that in our agroecosystems. In order to prevent pest and disease, we can grow many different crops in rotation cropping system, in crop association. That means it's difficult for one harmful insect, harmful for this species, to reach the same crop of the same species in the same plot because of different barriers, it's very difficult to disseminate. So we don't eradicate, we not eradicate, we won't eradicate, but we try to avoid this dissemination and this proliferation by associated rotating different crops in the same plot. That means we can get maximum cover plant, we can reduce rainwater dripping, and we can protect, of course, plants from the pest and disease by no longer spreading insecticides, fungicides, auxiliary insects, and mycorrhizae fungi are preserved. It's modern agriculture. By no longer using pesticides, we preserve biodiversity and keep up the sanitary quality food. That means we will eat food without any endocrine disruptor because we won't use pesticide. Now, it's obvious. There is no problem, there is alternative to properly and sustainably feed the whole humanity. The problem is other. Crop associations, one example, in Haiti, with different species, in order to prevent pest and disease dissemination, in order to avoid water dripping, in order to maximize the interception of solar energy. Other crop associations, beans and bananas, maybe permaculture. In this plot of land, more than 10 species cultivated at the same time in the same plot in order to maximize photosynthesis, leguminous in order to manufacture protein and so on, and trees in order to get to obtain mineral elements from the subsoil. Agroforestry in India, more than 300 humans per square kilometers. Very intensive cropping systems. Very intensive cropping system without synthetic fertilizers, without any pesticides. Ducks in the rice field, of course. In Vietnam, of course. Ducks are able to peck the harmful insects and to peck weeds. So, without any herbicide, insecticide. In France, too, we're introducing, we are learning a lot from South countries, it's true. Belgium and France are learning a lot from South countries in order to promote in their countries farming system inspired by agroecology. It's South country, and now it's North country. So we can exchange our experience in order to promote agriculture inspired by agroecology. Or these small animals with solar energy is able to not to eradicate weeds, but to avoid the proliferation. Solar energy, this animal here, from the morning